Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our monthly district advisor update meeting. Might wait a minute for some of the late joiners to get here. Like we usually do, go ahead and put where you're from in the chat. Alrighty, I'll go ahead and get started. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay. Um, Going back to COVID-19 updates. The FAQ webpage has been updated, I think, since the last time we talked, including a whole section about data reporting here. So I'd encourage everyone to look at that. We may still continue to add things to this. I think later today we'll be looking at adding a little more info about course reporting. If you haven't already seen the update from the commissioner, I also wanted to point out the Launch Nebraska, launchne.com. This is where there will be a lot of guidance about essentially school for next year. There's some stuff in here now. Definitely there's plans to keep adding a lot more to it though. So I'm sure you will be hearing more about this in the next couple of months. But I just wanted to point it out. Again, yeah, if you have any questions that come up that aren't already on the FAQ, go ahead and send it to the contact page here. All right, so several of the vendors have started sending that student crisis event data. We're expecting to get that data for every student basically this year. So we're not doing anything specific with it right now, but we wanted to get the vendors up and running with it. And it's just the data that flags a student as being affected by COVID-19, essentially. There is a report for it now in advisor validation. If you go to the general and miscellaneous tab, you will see the student crisis events report. And all it does is just repeat back what we've received from you. I believe there are still some vendors that have not began sending that yet, though. One possible new data element we're talking about, and I wanted to get anyone's feedback on this. We think it might be useful next year to know in general how often students are in the building versus learning from home. It's not necessarily something we need at the individual student level, but we were thinking this could be something that would be collected as a calendar event code. So similar to like reporting a weather day, you could say, for these 2 weeks, our entire school was learning remotely, and it would be just like instead of changing that day to a weather day, you'd be changing it to a remote learning day. Or if you have different tracks and you're alternating, these are just some possibilities that we thought might happen next school year. You could, assign some tracks this code and other ones don't get the code. We haven't definitely lock this in as something we wanted to collect next year. I'd like to hear if anyone has any feedback about that. Does that sound extremely difficult for you to collect? You can unmute yourself if you want to speak up.
If we could make that distinction at a class level or at a course level, I believe that from the high schools, it would be more course dependent rather than student dependent or track dependent.
Yeah, I mean, we do already have the flag on a course section to mark it as synchronous or asynchronous distance learning. But we were kind of expecting that there might be cases where it's not really per class. It's, the students would have one class, but some days they would be in the school and some days they would be at home. But that, splitting it up by class would also work. And if that happens, I would encourage you to submit those distance learning flags on the course section like normal.
But if it would be by class, how much work would that be that say, okay, we're off for 2 weeks and then we're back and then we're off for another week, because who knows how they're going to do this. I mean, you would have to go through and flag those each time. I would rather it just be, the school, if we're going to be closed, the whole school would be closed. My assumption is that. Yeah. And then that calendar day is what you talked about would be the best way, I would think, but that's just me.
Yeah, the to be clear, the flags that are on the course section, those don't have a date assigned to them. It's, if you put that on the course section, we're assuming you mean the entire semester for that course.
Right. Yep, that's what I was thinking, so.
Yeah, I think at the calendar level would make the most sense to me.
Are any schools, and I'm not saying we are because this is just a thought I've had, I don't know that OPS has looked at this at all, but are any schools looking at having like half of their kids come on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the rest of them are watching from home on a computer and then alternating, and those kids come in on Tuesday, Thursday? Anybody doing that?
There's all kinds of potential scenarios flying around the district. So there's nothing at all been set in stone until we hear whether we can open or not, I guess.
And this is Jill at NDE. One of the things we had thought about is if a district were to go to, like you mentioned, some kids come in Monday, Tuesday, other kids come in Thursday, Friday, but the alternating kids watch from home. Some of the districts could potentially set up 2 different calendars in order to still be able to report that. The other is that if all of your kids are spending 2 days at home and 3 days in school, or 2 days in school or something like that, I can't say we're concerned with the specific days as much as being able to count up how many days.
The proportion of time kids are in class.
So if it's 2 days a week that the kids are in this classroom and 3 days a week that they're at home or something like that, then as long as the calendar reflects that in general, what we're really trying to do is being able to collect what portion they're being educated at home versus what portion they're actually being able to come to school, in case we need to be able to use that for some of our calculations at the year end. There's also the possibility that could be more than one calendar code to reflect at-home education. We're still having those discussions. It could be possibility of remote in-person for like kids who are zooming into their classes versus remote self-paced for the kids who are taking packets home and working on them.
Wow.
It kind of depends. We haven't decided that yet, and it's it's not telling you how to do it, but rather giving different options, wondering if we need that level of detail. We're still having those kind of conversations. We welcome any feedback on it. What I have shared with those that are making these decisions, I'm hoping we can have some direction out to the districts and to the vendors by the end of this month on what we may be wanting to see there, because we know that this may involve some programming on the vendors' parts.
Well, and you talk about a school that splits up, like these kids come on this day and you put 2 calendars on that. That also means you have to maintain updating all those kids to be on different calendars.
And
So
that's
that's a burden. I mean, I'm sorry. I guess I'm frustrated because they don't know what they're going to do to data, but yet we should all put a burden on the districts to collect it at that level. I don't know. I'm just frustrated that I know we all don't have answers, but I mean, just to collect data. I mean,
and the reason we propose it is I expect that if this does not become resolved enough early enough, we may need to make additional calculations next year on, say, ADA and ADM like we did this year. But this year was fairly straightforward. There was a day where the entire state, or a group of days in a relatively short period of time, where the entire state then went to the distance learning and was no longer in the classroom, and we were able to make adjustments on the calculation for ADA to reflect that. But what we expect in the fall is the possibility that there are some school districts never have to do remote learning for the entire year because their area just doesn't have any cases or enough cases to have them move into that.
Well,
whereas other areas could have extended periods of time. And the problem is we just don't know what kind of adjustments we're going to need to do to the data, but we also don't want to try to throw something in next April asking you, hey, go back and look in the fall and tell us this. We're trying to put something in place to have that available now, because now is the time to put it in place for next year.
Well, what if, because I would imagine most districts would do it at building level. And I think updating the calendar at a building level isn't that big of a request. I mean, the districts were kind of doing that anyway. But what if you had more than one flag? Like you were completely closed, you went 50-50 in this building, meaning half the students came in for half the week and the other half came the other half, or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that might be more doable, because if they're going to make that kind of a decision, they're going to do that at a building level.
Sure.
And sure, you're going to have your onesie twosies. Like if you have severe profound kids coming into the building, like you got a kid with a trach, you might be going half and half. That kid's probably not coming in. They're going to do remote learning 100% on that one kid.
Yes.
And you could do a calendar for him. So
we don't expect the onesie twosie kids. Like if you get a kid who gets exposed and is asked to remote learn for 2 weeks while the rest of the kids are coming in, we don't expect a calendar for that one kid. That's handled just like any other medical issue for a child. This really is looking at the entire school, and we'll definitely take the 50%, and that actually was talked about, the 50-50 as a possibility. How many different calendar codes do you think? If you have suggestions for some of these potential codes, please send them into a ticket so that we can use those as our conversation here at the department.
So how would you code your course then if they're learning half at home and half at school?
You would code the course as an in-person, just like your normal.
Okay.
Because really the learning at home is an outlier in this case, whereas we would be learning in school except for this.
But if the kids have to log in and Zoom with the class, then why would the attendance be an issue if they're learning it at home or learning it at school?
Well, not all schools have them Zoom in, or you may not have your kindergarten through second graders Zoom in. You know, you may have some remote learn.
And remember, this whole thing depends on the fact that there's a parent at home that's able to help that kindergartner. If you have a parent that still needs to work, that kindergartner isn't going to sit at home and be on a Zoom meeting by himself. So, I don't know how this whole notion that they're getting education at home isn't always. The perfect scenario is if you're a teacher and you can stay at home and be with your kid all day long and Zoom in with your other classes, that's great. But what about the parents that are working? What happens to them, and what's happened to them now? This whole learning at home is based on a notion that a parent is there or somebody's there if they go to daycare. Is that daycare required to accommodate all of those Zoom meetings for those kiddos at their daycare? I guess I'm frustrated by that whole thing.
Those are
happening.
Those are great points to make, but they're not the question we're trying to answer right in this.
I know, but
I'm just trying to make sure that we have the ability, if needed, to get this information so that we can do what we need to do with our data.
I think the biggest issue would be making sure there's enough tracks for the SIS program.
And we're trying to not make you have, I really would not like you to have to put in additional tracks than you would normally have to, which is why I would rather simply take the tracks you would normally do and provide a code on the entire track. I don't want you to have to maintain additional ones in order to do this.
Hey, Jill, maybe, and I think this might come up with some districts, is I can see a superintendent calling me and saying, okay, so they said we got to report 50-50 or blah, 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 blah. How are they going to use that with ADM and affect my state aid? Because I could see a district deciding, well, I guess we're going to cut bait and do 50-50 because I'll get more money than if we shut down, do all 100% remote learning.
Well, the one thing we did, and you can explain what we did for ADM this year. Remember, ADM is an average daily membership, and in this particular case, we were trying to figure out not to count kids absent, but rather to figure out what days to count kids as, what days to utilize in order to calculate ADM. And what we did this year for 1920 is we stopped calculating ADM as of the last day your particular district was in an in-person education. We're not going to reduce the number of days in membership for the kids while maintaining, essentially the numerator while maintaining the denominator, and thus decrease your ADM. That is not what we're looking to do. What we're looking to do is to be able to essentially approximate what your year-long in-person ADM would be given some of these absences from school. If you have a period of time where you say you're going to do the 50-50 because you're trying to reduce the population in the school, and you expect the other kids to be on Zoom during that time. Again, I'm not getting into whether or not that's the right thing to do.
I just had
that I understand your frustration. It's a frustration for parents everywhere. But if that's the case, then more than I would say that if I were to make the decision, those days would all be counted toward calculating ADA and ADM, and you would be expected to take attendance on the kids. The question is, your district would decide, hey, do we take attendance on all kids, or do we just take attendance on the kids who are supposed to be in the building, and assume the ones who aren't supposed to be in the building are in attendance on those days? Maybe you decide to do that. Maybe you decide only the ones that log into Zoom are in attendance on those days. If you have an entire building that you go to remote learning for a period of time, we may remove any of those days from the ADA and ADM calculation. Remember, it removes them from both the numerator and the denominator, so it doesn't negatively affect your calculation, unless that's a period of time when all the kids would be in, would be in attendance. It's essentially, it doesn't affect your net ADM calculation.
Well, the only way they lose out is if they're closed for a long period of time and they got kids enrolled during that time. Does that?
But again, if they're
But-
closed for a long period of time, we don't put them in the numerator or the denominator, and we
Okay.
still get that ADM. Because remember, ADM is average daily. We're trying to figure out on average how many kids were in membership. And if we don't count that day, then that day doesn't count, and it's not negatively affecting your ADM calculation. It's the reason we decided to go with that for the ADM calculation for 1920.
Well, I mean, that helps to understand that. And I think if you explain that when you decide on how you want to collect these calendar days, I think that would be helpful to superintendents to understand that it shouldn't have a neutral effect on their ADM.
We would intend that any of the way we do this would have a neutral effect on ADM. We are not intending for any of this to negatively impact that.
Okay, so if we do worst case scenario and you can't open all year, you do remote learning for the whole year?
Well, that gets into that's a different conversation. Obviously,
Yeah.
that I think is going to have to go to the commissioner at the department and go to some people higher up than those on this phone call.
I also wanted to cover something comments in the chat. Ginger asked about using attendance codes to identify remote learning or packet learning. That definitely could work, but I think we're assuming that would be more work than assigning a calendar code. Also a couple comments about PowerSchool tracks. I guess, we're trying to lean away from doing tracks.
When you say tracks, what does that mean?
I think in Infinite Campus, they're just called different calendars.
Calendars, okay.
Basically, like having A students and B students, having different schedules.
Obviously, we wouldn't stop you from creating additional tracks. However, we do not want to push you into having to do that in order to accommodate this information.
And PowerSchool kind of has a hard limit net currently, so that may be difficult for them to do. But I could say from the EdFi perspective, there is no limit from our end, but that's more of a vendor issue.
If you guys could just, if what you captured this coming year is the least amount necessary so that it is the least disruption to the collection of data, I feel like the least amount necessary would be, you're closed or you're not closed, 100%. Maybe one other common thing. If you limit it so that people don't feel like they have to come up with something for absolutely every single possibility, because I think that's where we got into trouble when we started working with calendars to begin with. We had so many, if we close and we meant to close, if we closed but we didn't mean to close because there was snow, and if we worked in a full day of all of the classes versus we cut out the last 4 classes, and all of that ended up causing us such problems. I would say go into this cautiously for this next year, because this could be our new normal forever, and maybe we perfect it later, but just capture the basics this coming year. That's my vote.
And one thing to say is that if we give you 4 choices, but you as a district decide you're only ever going to give us 2 choices, we're either going to tell you that we are remote learning or not remote learning. That's what you give us.
That's what I would like to see. Because it may not be that what we're doing totally fits.
Right.
And maybe that's just okay, especially this first year as we go forward.
Yep.
Because we're just, you don't want to make it so complex that nobody knows what to do.
I agree. And that's one of the reasons we wanted the calendar. It wasn't a student level. We're not trying to find out every little thing. And we definitely don't want to collect any information that might violate HIPAA.
And Jill,
getting anything about a student's health in this.
And Jill, didn't Didn't they collect this year what each district's remote learning plan was through kind of a survey report? Could they do a more formal collection from each district explaining how they did remote learning? And maybe
They-
from us marking the calendar and that, they could, from those two pieces of information, maybe then for 21, 22, we can make a better informed decision about what we need to collect on the advisor side.
Yeah, I expect this fall you probably will see that, because I think we're all going into this expecting to have disrupted learning in the fall, especially potentially into the spring. And I expect those learning plans will be probably submitted again for 2021. And that is definitely something we can use. We probably utilize our research team to glean the information out of those plans and put it together with the calendar information.
I
So-
think that's definitely a possibility to just use an external piece too.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on. Thanks for the feedback, everyone.
Send in a ticket
Definitely.
if you have additional feedback, or if you have any suggestions of what you think your district would want to use for potential calendars. Okay, sorry, Max.
All right, next, I want to cover the work days. I believe there's a bulletin item going through the system right about now. I don't think I've seen it yet. Hopefully by the time you get your Thursday bulletin update, there should be one announcing the new workday calendar. It's just kind of been modified from the old calendar. Obviously, we're going to a full kind of Zoom meeting format. We do have it posted right now on our calendar website. Oh, yeah, Denise said a bulletin item just went out this morning. So as we've kind of transitioned to doing virtual ones, it's not so strictly separated by ESU anymore. But we still have, various, it's still kind of split up by, what ESU members are available to work at some of the meetings. And also we're really trying to stick to different breakout groups by vendor. So like you can see here, our first one that originally was going to be an ESU 1 workday is now just a virtual workday. We expect to do PowerSchool and GoEduStar at that meeting. So yeah, if, for some of the smaller vendors, I would encourage all GoEduStar districts to go to the May 26th one. And you can see we've got 4 dates for Infinite Campus and 2 dates for JMC. And we'll have help desk members and various ESU people helping with it. The basic schedule is we'll start off with kind of a common presentation, as well as a presentation from SRS. So mostly just, presentation and questions in the morning. Then after the lunch break, we will be having work time. We will take the main Zoom room and split it out into breakout rooms, generally by vendor or just, however many breakout rooms we need. The one thing I want to point out is we like to kind of get a head count. I know a lot of you may have already registered for your original ESU workday, but we've got just the simple registration form so we can kind of get a head count of what date you're attending and are you just looking for the presentation or the afternoon work time. So that registration link is here on the calendar page as well. And I encourage everyone to go sign up for that. Leave the bulletin. Yep, here's the bulletin item. By the way, as soon as we post a bulletin item, it's out here on the web page. And then generally everyone gets an email, I think Thursday evening, with their update about what was put into the bulletin in the last week. And that also has a copy of the registration link. Oh, the table is weird. Anyway, note about the data conference. Obviously that we're not really having a physical conference. We will be recording some videos, I think, for some of the major breakout sessions that were planned for the conference. We're going to record those videos in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have some communication when those are ready and posted. We'll probably also use some of those at the workday as well, I might guess.
Can I ask a question about something further up? And
Sure.
Just to be clear, I know we talked about the frequently asked questions and that kind of thing, but for this year, how our calendar is set up, how we were doing attendance, none of that, we don't really need to touch any of that for this year and make any changes. Is that correct?
No, I don't think so. Maybe the only change would be that if your district actually changed their end date, and because I know some districts ended up just quitting out like a week early or something, I might expect you to update that in your calendar, but that wouldn't have any effect on your ADA or ADM, since those both cut off in March.
Okay.
That's about the
Next
only
is Joyce
change that
about- yes,
I think
we
I would
ended on the
expect.
15th. But we weren't planning to update the calendar because of grade books.
Yeah, Max, we've been recommending our districts not update the calendar for reasons such as that.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to double check there was nothing we had to do this year any different. So, phew, thank you.
So even though we ended a week early, you're okay with us leaving it as is?
Yeah, I don't think that would have any effects really,
Okay,
since the attendance piece has already been taken care of.
okay, thank you.
Quick update about advisor validation. We did put out a small update. We added the locked data reporting windows to the demographics lookup and the special education lookup. And we've, what everyone's been waiting for, we've added the legal agreement screen back to the enrollment lookup. So if you'll get a little screen you have to click through when you do an enrollment lookup on a student who is not in your district. We still have some more updates we're trying to get to for the end of the year. Big one is the updated district admin sign off to help kind of simplify that. And we'll show the history of all sign offs. I guess since I didn't mention it earlier, also, yeah, the attendance reports in advisor validation were updated. So they display the date that we have for your district where it was cut off for attendance reporting, basically the last date that students were in classes. So if that date is not correct, send in a ticket to advisorhelp@nebraskacloud.org. I would also like to call out if anyone has any new feature ideas for advisor validation, send that in to send a ticket in advisorhelp@nebraskacloud.org. We're kind of trying to put together a plan for any future updates, further into next year right now. So this would be the time if you're sitting on any ideas, go ahead and send it in. Same thing with person ID too. Also, we're collecting enhancement requests other than, performance improvements. I'm aware of that. One thing about person ID I wanted to talk about or get some feedback. When should we turn on the new school year? When do we turn on 2021? I think under NSSRS, under the old unique ID system, we generally didn't roll it over until July, but I don't think there's any problem if we wanted to activate the new year now. The only thing is it might be a little bit confusing, or, you know, like if you go to, if we activated it today, when you go to add a student today, I assume we would have it default to the new school year, not to 1920. So basically, say we did want to put in the new school year tomorrow. Would anyone really have a problem with that? I know some people are already kind of pre-registering and getting students ready for next year, so I assume that may be useful to you.
What about special ed kids that need to be in the current school year?
You can still do it. You just, you know, like if you use the add online, enter online feature, you may have to flip the school year back to 1920. But we're not disabling 1920 at all.
Max, if I have a brand new student in my district or they're going to come this fall, is there any reason I can't just get them an ID right now from the 1920?
Not really. I mean, no, that wouldn't really hurt anything.
Because I think it happens now. If you had a SPED kid that you, like a birth to 3 that you were evaluating, I think they assign IDs to them. And then if they don't end up needing services, they never do get uploaded to advisor that year, but they've got an ID now. So I don't see a problem with waiting until July, because if they want an ID, they can still get an ID on those kids. They don't need to wait.
That is true. And yeah, we aren't tying it directly to anyone's enrollment data. There may be some reason for non-publics and direct certified students that we wanted to roll it over earlier. But that may not be relevant for people on the call here.
So Max, if we are uploading all of ours, are you saying that if you opened it now, we could either upload them as 1920 still, or turn around and do a separate upload that would include 2021?
Yeah, I think if we activated it, I believe that would be how it would work.
Okay, you can still do it both ways. Then I don't see a problem with starting it now.
Max, this is Jenny. Would that create a student record in Advisor if they created the ID now for
Technically, yes, it creates a student record, but a student record by itself doesn't really do anything in Advisor. Not until someone attaches an enrollment record to that student.
It wouldn't go out there and have an error saying you don't have an enrollment record.
No, at the point that a student record itself is created, it's not tied to any district.
Okay.
It's just tied to the unique ID record.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I will take that as we could go either way. And I'll circle around with some of the other teams to see if they definitely wanted it to go now. Advisor dashboard, still not released, but we are doing a lot of back-end work on it still. I'm really hoping in the next couple of weeks it'll be ready. We are planning on having one of those videos for the data conference be a tour of the new dashboard. I've gotten a few people who said they would help test the dashboard, but again, if anyone is interested, please email me. I mean, we'll generally plan on opening the dashboard for everyone, but if there's some people who were interested in actually going through it and giving us feedback, let me know. All right, Advisor 2021. Nothing's really changed there. We have the staging environment ready for certification. We did post the certification results website here. Obviously, we don't have anything out here yet. But for every vendor, we're going to keep a little, list of anything that remains to be fixed or anything features that we know aren't supported. And these links here are links to the actual test plan documents that we'll be working on as we go through the tests. And this webpage is just linked through our advisor resources webpage up at the top. just want to let you know that's out there, that we had talked about that last time. Note for vendors, there's a possible fix for that descriptor error, that causes those numerous descriptor errors that then go away. I've rolled that out to the 2021 sandboxes and staging. If any vendors are using those environments, let me know if you are still getting that error.
Max, when did you roll that out, that fix?
Yeah, last night.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll have to rerun because we were still getting those errors, but I'll see if we can push some data through again and see if they happen.
And I'm not 100% sure that fix it will work, but it's just something we got from Headfi.
Okay.
Also, we had talked about this at the last meeting. We are expecting that student address will be a field that we will more or less be required. We've talked about the exceptions last time. And so we are working on the exact specs and definitions for how that, how we collect that and what students we want it for. We're doing this as part of a federal study with the federal DOE. They're wanting to study the possibility of using address as a proxy for economically disadvantaged rather than using, free and reduced lunch eligibility. So that's just a study in the early stages. So we aren't making that switch officially yet. All right, some vendor updates. Let's see here. Synergy, I think, has had some fixes pending. I don't know if that has gone out for crisis event stuff, but I know they were close on that. I know GoEduStar is publishing crisis event data. They've just kind of automated that for now. Infinite Campus, I believe, had a version that went out a couple of weeks ago. I believe we have some CIC people on the call if you wanted to correct me there. I believe that included the option for setting that crisis event field. And if you get Michelle or Rob, if you're trying to talk, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was double muted. There has been an update, and under the program admin tool in Infinite Campus, there's a module called Federal State Program Updater that'll allow you to batch add that crisis event to the students.
All right, thank you. JMC, I just got word that they are planning probably this week to release the update that has CRDC fields, crisis event field, and some other fixes. Greg said it would be build version 5.14.20 or later. PowerSchool had a release at the end of April that had some fixes and additional data publishing. There is definitely at least one more release planned for May, though. Anyway, well, yeah, I'm not aware of any updates for Sims or SRS, but since I saw Anna and Scott both on, if you guys had anything, go ahead and let us know.
I don't have anything. I just need to sit down, get my test cases ready, and get a meeting scheduled with you for 2021 certification.
Yeah, I don't believe we have anything major to add. Just working to continue to prevent and correct errors with the advisor reporting process.
All right. All right. That's basically everything. I wanted to cover, though, that in order to help us kind of control security better, I think it's time to put out a new Zoom link for the June meeting, especially since this current link's not under my account technically. So this will be helpful to use a new link. I added a password. We're not really planning on inviting every district in the state, though, so I think we're still probably going to have to post a link on our website. So that's not the most secure idea, but we haven't had any problems so far, so I think we can keep managing that. So I will update, in the next couple of days, I'll update this link on all our websites where we had the old Zoom link. If you've got this saved in your calendar, go ahead and copy this link that is in the meeting agenda. And yeah, next meeting would be June 10th. All right, is there anyone else that has some questions or anything else they want to talk about this month?
I have a question about program participation. Is it assuming until we put an end date on our students for this year, it's assuming the end date is the last day in our calendar? And so it tells it, we get an error saying that it is, the end date's not correct. So is that probably why there's a bunch of errors in program participation?
In general, I don't think that, sorry, I was trying to copy that link. In general, I didn't think that that was true for all programs. We don't expect a program end date for every program record, but I thought I may have been discussing with campus recently about at our last meeting about the usage of, or no, maybe that was someone else. There is definitely an error, like if you send us a SPED 99 exit date, exit code, then we expect a date to go with that.
These are like for Title I and 504s that are tied to our enrollments. And it's telling me the end date on those is 7/31, which is the last day in our calendar. So I just thought maybe when I didn't know what that's picking up, and I can put a ticket.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, sorry. That error would be because we're expecting only start and end dates within the 12 months of the school year.
Okay.
From
so
7/1 to
okay.
6/30.
I didn't know if anybody else had that error, and I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
And let me, oh, cool. Let me get that link for you. I'll put that in the chat. Alrighty, I think that's it for this month. Thank you everyone for joining these and giving us feedback.
Thank you, and sorry for my rant earlier. I just.
No, I think I understand that point entirely. That's a big problem, but not one that we can tackle.
Not one we can fix. That's right.
All right, thanks everyone, and see you June 10th.